I look around a room that's filled with faces. Every tear a window to the soul. Like silent unsung symphonies, the wild and wonderful mysteries, masterpieces I will never know. 'Cause everybody's looking for some light. You know everybody's looking for some light. Oh, when the world is weighing on your shoulder, when the sorrow's heavy on your soul, carry on and sing it like a soldier, saying, come on, we're gonna make it home. Everybody's looking for some light. You know everybody's looking for some light. So come on, everybody's looking for some light. Darkest skies of vision, like a veil before our eyes, that love alone is able to deny. You know everybody's looking for some light. You know everybody's
I've discovered over the last few years that I am not who I thought I was, and I'm still not. At my age, I used to think I was mostly defined. The truth is that who I thought I was mostly false. And I respectfully submit the same is likely true for you. Who we think we are has been influenced over the years by our parents, families, schools, where we live, and others with whom we interact. Our ego, the internal voice that guides our thoughts and actions, unconsciously adopts those influences, and we become them. In that process, egos pick up all of the fears and prejudices and sadnesses, small joys, and overall attitudes that determine how we think and act. The ego is self-focused and sees everything we experience as revolving around us. What we discover is that the ego, the part of us that we think defines us, is mostly what we've been taught and not the real us. But we can awaken from it. In that regard, I believe we were born to be far more spiritual than human. That means we were born to be others-focused, at least as much as ego-focused. With our egos dominant, we mostly practice the imperfections of humanity, without perceiving there's a higher way, a way of life that is not afraid, not judgmental, not self-doubting, or prejudiced. Our goal is to awaken from the false reality our egos create, to instead become a person of greater peace, love, and joy. To achieve that means we must first awaken our heart. We must examine all the ways our ego has put up barriers from interacting with the world using love. We must honestly ask ourselves why we are insecure. Why do we speak or act harshly? Why do we fear those who appear different from us? Why do we limit our unconditional love for ourselves, our families, our friends, and even our enemies? The awakened heart sees no boundaries between the self and others. It perceives unity with all creation and understands the well-being of all is essential for the well-being of the self. The awakened heart instinctively prompts us to act with kindness, to understand the pains and weaknesses of others, and love them anyway. With an unawakened heart, we interact with the world in ways that was first intended for us. No longer do we listen to the ego that tells us to fear, to criticize, or dislike anyone, including the self. We become a golden rule beacon of light that shines on all we encounter. We unconditionally love fellow humans at least as much as we love ourselves.
Have I been asleep? Am I just hungover? Drunk in a dream world. Now I'm far too sober. It seems so silly now. Yesteryear's wonder can shout all I want, won't drown out the thunder. Maybe I've tricked myself all this time. I'm not who I think. And if it's true, maybe it won't be so bad to lose everything. 'Cause nothing is real, my vision corroded. All that I've seen, this old time is eroding. No. So I embraced the truth and hoped it would relinquish me. I'm not suited for weaving webs of deceit. Trap myself in my prayers of free. So a total reality changing order for me. Honesty is the best policy I can see. I cannot believe how naive I was being, 'cause I was assuming that everyone believed the truth. In a perfect world it would not be too much to ask for a little truth, but it seems these days it's fashioned out by those two before their hearts splitting in two. Maybe I've tricked myself all this time to be someone else. Where do I go when I don't even know how to be myself? But nothing is real, my vision corroded. All that I've seen, this whole time is eroding. I don't wanna know how big a mess I made. I can recall it's too far away now. But I've grown comfortable curtain is open behind me, and my eyes don't deceive me. I've opened up, finally I'm free. I've got so far to go still, but at least I can see. So apologies if I don't recall your face. You see, the years haven't changed me. I don't feel the same. But nothing is real. My vision corroded. All that I've seen this whole time is eroding. I don't wanna know how big a mess I made. I can't recall, it's too far away now. But I've grown comfortable, blinded, content with the world I could see. But the curtain is open behind me, and my eyes don't deceive me. My eyes don't deceive me.
I earlier discussed how awakening can help us see our egos for what they are. They are too often self-focused, self-critical, self-promoting, ungrateful, and unhappy. The ego tells us we are not good enough, or that someone's actions have insulted us, or a hardship makes life miserable. Generally speaking, our egos make us feel bad. If we begin to awaken our hearts by trying to instinctively feel unconditional love, we can then begin to awaken our minds. When we do, we will realize that the thoughts produced by our minds are often not truth. Our thoughts are actually perceptions, unconsciously filtered through the ego, which tells us to think in certain ways. Perhaps to falsely think black men are criminally inclined, to think we are not capable of some undertaking, or to think of ways to angrily respond to a perceived insult. When we begin to awaken our minds, we'll see that many of our thoughts are inherited. We think about and perceive the world not according to heartfelt truth, but according to ego-centered prejudices, fears, and doubts, often put there in our childhood. You are not good enough or smart enough, we may have been implicitly told when we were young. If that was so, then for the rest of our unawakened lives, our thoughts will be guided by those unconscious falsehoods. For me, that might involve thinking that despite several people praising me for something I've done, I'll only remember the one person who criticized me. I'll feel ashamed and even more self-doubting. Further, I'll inwardly focus my thoughts on me, how sad and incompetent I am. I won't instead instinctively think about those who offered praise and feel gratitude for the love they expressed. I also won't think kind thoughts towards the one who criticized me. An awakened mind begins to see how the ego wrongly guides our thinking, and indeed makes us unhappy. An awakened mind cognitively denies the prompts of the ego and instead listens to the awakened heart, one that promotes kindness for myself and for others. In doing so, the awakened heart and the awakened mind fill us with contentment and joy.
Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. No hell below us, above us only sky. Imagine all the people living for today. Imagine there's no country. It isn't hard to do. Nothing to kill or die for, and no religion too. Imagine all the people living life in peace. You may say I'm a hater,
Perhaps the most negative attitude of the human ego is to see others only as they relate to us individually. The ego draws us to people who look and act like we do, because those people then affirm our self-centric thinking. And we mostly ignore or even repelled by those who seem different, because they confront our selfish belief that normality is us. That belief in what is supposedly normal comes to us from centuries of ignorance and bias and ancient religious doctrines, which, as I implied earlier, are taught to us in childhood and wrongly become a part of who we are. For instance, Supposedly normal gender roles had been handed down to us by our many ancestors. Men are to be tough, aggressive, and competitive. Women are to be quiet and gentle and sensitive. Such roles have been historically forced on the culture, such that any man or woman who acts outside these rigidly defined roles, they are told to either change or stay hidden. Some say this comes naturally from innate biology. Men are supposed to be tough so they can provide food and protection to the allegedly weaker sex. Women are taught to be gentle and nurturing so they can allegedly better care for and raise children. But as we know, those definitions of gender roles are anything but natural. Nature births some women to be tough and competitive, and some men to be sensitive and nurturing. Indeed, as we know, some biologically born men and women are not that way in how they think, feel, and act. Equally incorrect biases have been implanted in us about people with differing external characteristics that include skin colors, facial shapes, body size, and even hair composition. Implicit human prejudices and stereotypes toward people who are outwardly different are then further extended against people of different ethnicities, backgrounds, wealth, and religion. What we are learning today, however, is that we are not born with those biases. We're taught them. And they become a part of how we think and act, such that we don't even know we practice such biases. We may outwardly now know that racists and heterosexists and misogynists are wrong, and we proclaim we're not one of them. But our actions and our thoughts tell a different story. Many of us congregate in neighborhoods, schools, and churches with people who look like us. For those of us who are white, we blindly accept the privileges that come from being the dominant human type. And we do nothing to promote equity with people who are different. Awakening our social consciences comes as a logical progression from awakening our hearts and our minds. A heart and mind that are seeking to deny the ego's influence. They begin to realize that we do have unconscious inner biases, ones that are not our fault, but that we are responsible to overcome. As I've said, our first step must be to awaken our hearts, then our minds, all in order to awaken our social consciousness. We do that through honest reflection and admission that we do hold inner biases against many people our egos have falsely told us are different and people to be feared. We begin to see how our biases are shared by our culture and how that causes imbalances in our justice systems, our healthcare systems, our schools, neighborhoods, and economic systems. An awakened conscience will not only want to change our personal wrong feelings and thoughts, but those of society too. Our awakened hearts, minds, and consciences can then become a part of what heals and unites people, so that every single person enjoys dignity and respect and worth and equity.
You are the new day, new day. You are the new day. I will love you more than Let the birds all hail the morning. Love of life will earthly say, you are the new day. When I lay me down at night, knowing we must pay, dawn so clear that this night might stay yesterday. Thoughts that we as humans small could show us an end at all lie around me where they fall before the new day. One more day when time is running out for everyone. Like a breath I knew would come, I reach out the new day. Hope is my philosophy, just these days in which to be. Love of life beats hope for me. For on the new day, you are the new day.
For just a moment, I ask you to imagine yourself as a fully loving, kind, generous, and empathetic person. Someone who is secure in who you are and the beauty you have to offer the world. This person you imagine yourself to be, and the unique ways you would live your life, they are who you and I were born to be. We are, in truth, spiritual beings who have taken on flawed human feelings, thoughts, and prejudices. Awakening the full range of who we were meant to be is a process of changing how we perceive the world. Ultimately, it's about awakening our spirits. The real us is a person far beyond the self-centered ego. The true us is what the famous psychologist Carl Jung called the capital S self. It transcends the little s self of introspection and selfishness to instead be at one with all existence, the totality of humanity, creation, and the cosmos. The capital S self is not concerned with needing and desiring things for one's supposed pleasure or reassurance. It seeks togetherness, union, and free-flowing love with all. As we awaken our hearts, minds, and social consciences, we will feel different. Most spiritually awakened people will want to be more in tune with dimensions beyond themselves through meditation, silence, and peaceful reflection. They will see a noticeable change in how they think and act. Mostly, they will assume the kind of secure humility that does not react to insults, hurts, or setbacks, but instead takes those peacefully and with love. Spiritually awakened people feel greater peace. No longer do they worry about what others think of them or about the everyday troubles we all have. Emotionally, they are content and happy. Mentally, they are honest, authentic, and kind to themselves and all others. They discover their purpose and meaning in life, and they actively practice it. Heart-wise, spiritually awakened people are far more forgiving and understanding of the flaws in others, because they've come to know their own selfish egos and personal foibles. How they live their lives becomes substantially simpler and more focused on inner pleasures. They feel a greater sense of oneness and interdependence with nature and with other people. No longer must they be right and others wrong. No longer must awakened people be in control. They instead surrender control over their health, physical needs, life, and death. They are secure and humbly confident in their intuition. Awakening our spirituality is, I believe, especially important for me and for Unitarian Universalists. Many of us are too caught up in our thoughts and intellectual knowledge, much of which is often controlled by the self-centered ego. I have sadly adopted the Western Enlightenment philosophy that my thinking determines my existence. Instead, I need to adopt Eastern ideas of knowing and seeing through the third eye, which is about sensing, intuition, and hearing the subtle sounds of nature and the universe. In sum, I must let go of myself and enlarge my being to feel part of the infinite beauty of all humanity, nature, the stars, and the planets. I must awaken my spirit.
I found life and I found laughter in forgiveness. I found rest on the shoulders of redemption. I found hope when hope was dead. I could lose it in a moment, so I dare not close my eyes. I'll watch fear fall with the sunset and see hope rise with the tide. And when the pain is true, sometimes these troubles prove that I'm alive. My eyes are open, my heart is beating, my lungs are full and my body's breathing. I'm moving forward, I found my freedom, I found a life that gave me reason to live. As this dusty road now settles and I see what's lay before, every tear that held a broken dream is now shattered on the floor, and now bursting forth in splendor all the blossoms second tries, because dreams have been a mark of love, are dreams that never die. Sometimes life can feel so unkind. Sorrow won't define me, so just reminds my soul, my soul. My eyes are open, my heart is beating, my lungs are full and my body's breathing. I'm moving forward, I found my freedom. I know the sorrow, I know the heartache, I know the fear comes of tragic heartbreak. I'm moving forward,
Just as I stated last Sunday, that holiness is a process, the same is true of awakening. I do not believe anyone becomes fully woke. For me, that involves becoming perfect, which, as we intuitively know, is not possible. We all inhabit physical bodies and brains with all of their imperfections and desires and biases. Awakening does not mean we totally ignore our bodies and our inner egos. Instead, it means we learn to more and more let go of them and move away from how they can dominate us. Awakening means learning to more and more practice unconditional love through kind words and empathy and gentleness and serving. It equally means unconditional love for ourselves, but filtered through the golden rule. We are to love others at least as much as we love ourselves. We will never be perfect at practicing the golden rule. We'll never be perfect at disassociating ourselves from the physical world. But we can and should embark on the journey, no matter our age. I encourage listening to today's many messages and Michael's wonderful music again, and then embarking on your own learning of what it means to be awakened. Take small first steps toward awakening your heart, your mind, social conscience, and spirituality. Commit to the journey of becoming awakened, and not the destination, the false destination of being awakened. Embrace waking up and begin to know the real you. And I wish each of you much peace and joy, as well as many thanks for listening to today's second unique service, one that Michael and I came up with, the idea of which over a month ago. We think it's a fun and creative way to express ideas that can enlighten and inspire all of us. Thank you again for listening.